Hi, Jane. Thank you so much for joining us again on the podcast. Last time we spoke about burnout, and we're going to just kind of go along with that theme a little bit again today, mainly with a focus on that when you're working within safeguarding, you're absorbing so much negativity. There are things that affect the way we think, feel, and live. How can we get over that?
So what tends to happen is our brains get kind of cluttered with lots of different thoughts, and we lose track of where we are in there. And we can also give too much meaning to our thinking. So, for example, if you're dealing with you're fairly new to safeguarding, say, and it's the first time you come across a really, really challenging situation, and what can happen with that is we take it home with us. Yeah. And not only do we take it home with us, we then carry it with us everywhere we go from then onwards. And it affects how we feel. And more of that, if we're not careful, what happens is it affects our mood. So it really, even without us noticing it, our brain is absorbing so much unpleasant stuff, for want of a better phrase, that our mood goes with it. So imagine having an untidy desk. Yeah. Walking into your office and having a really untidy desk. Your brain can be like that. There's all this stuff just piled everywhere. And there are two things we can do with that untidy desk. We can pick up a bag, we shove all the stuff into that bag and put the bag out of sight. And then the desk looks fine on the surface. And, that decluttering has been done on that space, but there's still all of that clutter in a bag. This is what happens in our brains. We pick all this stuff up and we think, oh, right, okay, I don't want that in the front of my brain. So we essentially lock it away in a chest in our brains. Yeah. And it just keeps piling stuff in there, and you pile stuff in there, and you pile more stuff in there. And of course, it overflows. And it feeds us with all of these thoughts. And one of the most amazing things that happened was with a client a while back. She had all of this. She'd been adopted as a young child, and she was carrying a lot of stuff about that. She was carrying a lot of stuff about her brother. She was carrying a lot of stuff about all sorts of different things, to be fair. And it was all locked away in this chest. And so we safely had a look inside it. It's like going into your cupboard where, I'm terrible for this. I put stuff in a cupboard out of the way so I can't see it. You open those cupboard doors, you go, oh my goodness. And it's terrifying. You've got to sort all that stuff out. So it can feel really terrifying to actually stick your hand in that box of stuff that's in your brain. But when you do, and you do it in a safe space, then actually what happens is you realize that stuff wasn't scary in the first place. And that by pushing it away, it's just affecting your thinking. And when you allow it out, you're it's like if you tidy the cupboard as well as your desk. So you haven't just locked it away in a bag in a cupboard. You've everything. You feel a lot better. It feels a lot more chilled out. So that's what we're doing. So what I'm saying here is we need to guard against putting it in a bag in our brains, out of sight, and thinking we've dealt with it.
I think the point you brought up there is actually finding a safe space and actually finding someone that you feel safe passing that on to. Because I know that there are a lot of people who would like to talk about their problems either on social media, or they just kind of blurt it out in conversation with people. I know that in the past I've had those kind of situations myself. But it's finding that right person. And obviously, as we very well know, you can't just go around talking about safeguarding with loads of people. So it does limit the amount of people that you can go to. And this is why supervision is so, so important.
Absolutely. You've pointed to exactly that thing. So because I knew this when I was a head teacher, and in fact, when I was an assistant head and the senior DSL in the school, supervision was key. So I brought in supervision as a head for my staff, separate to me. Prior to that arriving, I was their supervision. So because my thinking is you shouldn't take it home with you. So putting it in a compartment in your brain and going, oh, it's not going to come home with me. It's still there. Processing it, because when we process these things in a safe space, in a way that we can, the power it holds over us disappears.
Mm.
Yeah. And then we can start to notice the thoughts. So this is the amazing thing. And I know how difficult I found this when I was spoken to about this originally. I remember doing mindfulness training and being told, yes, thoughts will come in, just notice them, just let them go away again. Don't pay any attention to them. And it's like, how the heck do you do that?
Well, it's like you've basically been. It's like the elephant in the room. You're told, don't look at it. It's like,
Yeah.
well, no, I am.
So a thought's coming in, so you're going, oh, I mustn't think about it. I mustn't think. You are thinking about it.
Yeah.
So the thing is, thoughts will come in. The thing is, we can give them meaning, we can give them power, or we can choose not to, because we are doing this all the time. Your brains are having millions of thoughts, only a few of which you're paying attention to.
Mm.
So you actually know how not to pay attention to something without trying to not pay attention to something, because the minute you try, it happens. Yeah. So just instead of trying not to see the thought or hear the thought, notice the thought and don't give it. So this is something you have to practice, but it's the idea of, oh, this thought's come in, or I've got this feeling. Yeah.
Mm.
So say you're dealing with a really difficult safeguard. Oh, you've just had so much safeguarding going on for weeks and it's overloading, and you're dealing with difficult feelings around that. Yeah. Those feelings are coming from your thinking and the meaning you're making of the feelings. It's like this totally iterative route. It's going round and round and round and round in this loop. You experience a sensation which has come from a thought you didn't know you had. You attach a meaning to that sensation. So you have more of that sensation and it just keeps coming. And you kind of go, oh, this has real power. This is meaningful. This is really, this is life. This is how I am. This is what it is. This is how difficult it is, how hard it is, how depressing it is. And that's because we're giving the feeling meaning.
Mm.
What if you just sat with the feeling without giving it meaning?
I mean, it sounds. It sounds simple, but how do you do that?
So this is, again, it's practice. It's knowing. So our bodies are tuned. Our brain is tuned to assess for risk and constantly scan for risk. Yeah. And so our system of hormones that trigger the feelings are designed around risk. Yeah. Risk and reward. That's their design system. And they can go into overload. And the reason they go into overload is because we pay too much attention to giving meaning to feelings. We've created these labels that say, oh, that means I'm feeling happy. That means I'm feeling sad. But actually, we have more sensations in our bodies than we've got labels. Yeah? So what if we let go of the labels? Instead of going, this means I'm feeling scared, or this means I'm feeling angry, or this means I'm feeling upset, just don't attach a word to it, because words have power.
I think the dilemma can be, though, is that with sometimes, say, for example, myself, is the limited knowledge of understanding of why I felt like something, to give it a label was actually much more of a calming influence for me, and gave me more understanding of it. I think that the difference comes when I was able to actually find someone who was a safe person to talk it through. And this is why I love delivering supervision myself, is because I provide that safe space and I encourage people to be as open and honest as possible. It doesn't matter whether or not they're worried that actually, oh, that negativity is going to make me sound like an awful DSL. It's like, no, actually, I've experienced it myself.
Yeah.
I know where you're at.
And this is the thing. And the other thing that I'm saying in all of this is every feeling is okay. So this is what I mean by don't give it a label. But the reason I'm talking about labels is we attach value to different feelings. I'm allowed that one. I'm not allowed that one. This one means I'm good. This one means I'm bad. So it's that bit of it that's the challenge. And you're absolutely right. This stuff, if we keep it in here, we're not decluttering, because we're just going, oh, it's all going to stay in here. And I'm not going to say it to anybody. I'm going to keep it. Yeah, I'm going to keep it in that box. I'm going to put it in that cupboard, in that bag, in that cupboard, out of the way, so that it's not there. Well, it's still there. It hasn't gone away. It hasn't been decluttered.
Hmm.
So you're absolutely right. The key to managing ourselves when we're dealing with complex situations or
Hmm.
any form of safeguarding, it could just simply be the workload. When we're dealing with the workload of safeguarding, that they don't have to be complex, they don't have to be really upsetting. It can just simply be the number.
Hmm.
When we're dealing with that, if we don't declutter our brains by safely allowing it to come out and be processed, then it stays in that bag, in that cupboard, out of the way. And we think we've cleared our desk and we haven't.
The desk analogy is actually really, really helpful. So I'll give you kind of like a, let's look into hypothetical, but actually I'll be really honest, it's linked to actually my kind of experience of working on the front line myself. Is that at the end of the day, when you've dealt with a lot of stuff, and let's be honest, let's look at a Friday when it's coming at, like, just as
It's
you're
always
leaving,
late Friday.
and it's always the oh, I forgot to bring this up, or something major has happened, and your
Well,
weekends and holidays are just a nightmare for
but
DSL.
also children don't want to go home for the weekend.
No, they don't. They
So
don't. And
if it's the end of term
mm,
as well, that's another time when it's a real
absolutely, yeah.
push. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really, it does get to you after a while. It's you
Mm.
can't just go, I'm going to switch off, because it doesn't happen. However, before you leave work, and if this is possible, because I always found it difficult because I had to go off and pick up my children from various schools in the local area. It was fortunate when one of my boys could actually come to the school that I was working at. It was so much easier. But the fact is, affording yourself at least 5-10 minutes of literally, I used to just sit in the car actually, and then just debrief on things, because I found it was quite dangerous to actually try and drive and do that. So just pausing or sitting in another space of my office, just to kind of go, right, I need to debrief of these situations that have happened today. And it wouldn't necessarily be with someone else. If it
No.
was, brilliant. But if it was just to myself, just to kind of go say out loud, it might have made me look a bit weird. I sometimes actually made it look like I was on a voice call. I look back on these things that I used to do. It just sounds really weird, but the things you do as a DSL. But the thing is, I used to have to say it out loud of
Yes.
what had happened that day, just to be able to process it, so it didn't stay in my mind.
So this is the beauty. I mean, as you can see, I'm a coach, and the power in coaching is not in what the coach does. It's the fact that the coach creates a safe space for you to talk. And the coach is just a mirror to reflect back what you're saying. Slightly more powerful than talking to a lamppost.
Mm.
But what you're saying is exactly right. We process better when we speak.
Mm.
It's a sense of decluttering our brain when we speak things out. Because two things happen when we do that. We're releasing what's going on in our brain, and often we can see where that story, we're just getting caught up in something where we can see it as it comes out. We process it differently. We spot it as we speak it.
Mm.
And so I love what you're saying, because speaking into a voice note or just speaking out
Mm.
rather than writing it out. I mean, for some people, writing it out is powerful. For
Yeah.
me, it's speaking. But
Mm.
some way of not churning it in here, it has to be out here. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Well, you can sometimes go through situations. I've from just picking one out of the last 10 years, where there were some children going to be taken away from their family. They were obviously very upset, but obviously you saw the kind of the mixed emotions of the fact that they were in some way relieved, because the fact is it was quite an abusive situation, but at the same time it's their parents, and so they're going to have that emotional connection. But what happens is that memory, or those things you saw as a DSL, as somebody who had to be part of the decision making as well, which is you had that guilt and that, and to a certain extent you have that feeling of shame. Those memories latch onto something else in your brain,
Yeah.
which kind of brings you into your own life, where you kind of think, oh, maybe I haven't been a good parent to my kids in this situation, which is probably just 1% of what's happened in that one. But it's almost as if it just kind of, it's like a magnet. Straight away, that memory has to go somewhere. And so it
Yes.
latches onto something that's within your brain. And there's probably some psychologists listening to this at the moment. They're probably thinking, well, we need to speak to Chris, but he needs some help. And so I have to speak it out in order to kind of just remove that magnet off of my own memory and just go, right, okay, that's a
Yeah.
work situation. That's not a reflection on myself.
And I love what you're saying, because actually we see the world, like I said in my last conversation with you, we see the world through our own thinking. So when we're looking at the safeguarding situations that we look at, and I've had so many of these, like late Friday nights. One happened partway through a parents' evening where I ended up having to go and spend, I think it was 2:00 in the morning. I was sat with this child in the police interview centre safeguarding suite, 2:00 in the morning. I've got young children at home. It's like, that's not ideal, but and it sits with you. And I mean, I've still got that memory, but I have no emotion attached to it. But we see the world through our own thinking. So when we see these things, we're immediately looking for patterns in our own lives. So what you're saying is a natural way that we look at the world. We never see the world through anything other than our own thinking. That's all we ever see it through. So your experience is, everybody listening to this, they'll go, oh, I remember that happening to me such and such a time. We all do it. Yeah? And you're right. When we speak it out, it's not in that cupboard, it's not in that bag out of sight. It's actually been organized and sorted and tidied. The memory's still there. You can still remember the event, but the emotional impact of that memory is reduced.
So what advice would you give to someone who has been working for a long time on the front line, in any capacity within safeguarding, and they go, I just handle it myself, I don't need to speak to someone else? What would your advice be?
So this really speaks to so many different things, doesn't it? Because we think that's the right thing to say, and we think that means that we are fine, we're okay. It just means that box is a very, very big one and quite well sealed. Doesn't mean it's processed. Yeah. And at some point it may affect them. So, and I thought, and I'm going to use me, I thought that was me. Okay? I thought that was me. I thought I was really, really good at dealing with stress and separating all these different things from my reality. Like, that's that, this is me. And then something comes back to bite you. And in the end, I ended up with burnout from a whole range of different reasons. But part of that was stuff that I thought I dealt with that I just put in a box.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my personal experience and experience I have from so many other people is that box will eventually open. Something will open that box. And it's not a weakness, which is, I think, where people see it. It's not a weakness or a waste of time to declutter at the instant that it happens, or to declutter regularly so that box never gets full.
I'm glad you said that, because the question I asked there was, it was the me of about 6 years ago, because I was very much that person who just went, yeah, I don't need any supervision, I'll be fine. I'll sort it out for the rest of my team. I'll just keep on going and fighting on. But since we started doing this podcast, I had a number of people who have contacted me on various platforms saying, thank you for being honest. Thank you for being that person that just says, yes, you were that person at one point. And so I make a point now of most of my episodes to kind of say, this is where I went wrong. This is what I don't want you to do. And this is the
thing. And the beautiful thing is, we're human. This is the state of being human. We make assumptions about things. We make assumptions about ourselves. We state that we're fine. We think we are okay. We think we can handle it all. All of this is just being human. We all make mistakes. Always. Everybody. There isn't a human on the earth that hasn't made a mistake. And I would say it won't be just one mistake. It will be millions of them. Because we're all human. Every single one of us. And we have this funny idea that we have to be more than human. And I'm not entirely sure how we do that as human beings.
I think that in the context of being a safeguarding lead, the fact is that you are panicked that if you make a mistake, that could be it's like a surgeon. The fact is that if they make a mistake, it's very serious. If we make a mistake and we didn't handle something properly, or we didn't communicate properly, or we didn't, send off information, collaborate properly with the local authority. I mean, let's look at why the Children's Act of 2004 was developed. It
Yeah.
was on the back of lack of communication. So we have this fear that is deep down inside us, and so
And
we're scared of making mistakes.
and that's exactly why we need to declutter.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
if we don't declutter, we're more likely to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Supervision is the best way to not make mistakes.
100%.
Because then your brain's got space to process stuff, and you can't always do it alone.
Yeah.
This is the other thing. I was a DSL for most of my teaching career, and I taught for 28 years. And most of that I was in safeguarding as well, from I think about my 4th year in education. So for 24 years, I was a DSL. Yeah. There's a lot I've seen in that time. But even as a head teacher with 20 plus years of experience as DSL, there were things I hadn't seen before. There were things I didn't know the answer to. There were things that needed to be worked through as a team. Now, I don't mean necessarily as a team of my staff. That's not what I mean, but not on my own. Yeah. And so this is the other thing. It can feel a very lonely job. It can feel like you've got to hold all of it, and that you have nowhere to turn. And my advice to anybody is twofold. One, always get supervision. That's just a done deal. Always get supervision. And two, you can ask.
Yeah. You
can ask, because the mistakes happen when we think we can't. And we do the best we can, but we didn't have all the information, or we didn't know all of the possible answers. So we don't make a decision that would be the most effective decision in that moment.
This is why I enjoy taking supervision sessions. I allow the person to be as open and honest as they really want to be. I say to them, there are no stupid questions, because this is that they need to have somebody they can ask those questions. That to some people, they'll be like, well, you don't know that. And the reason why I take that approach is because when I first became a DSL, someone said, get on LinkedIn and you can ask any questions on there of safeguarding professionals. And I did it. And I basically just asked a couple of questions. And then somebody came back with, if you don't know that, you shouldn't be a DSL. And I tell you what, I came away from that feeling so demoralized. And I was like, if ever I have to give advice to someone, if anyone asks me any questions about safeguarding, I would never, ever treat them like that. And we still stick to that today. It's like, it doesn't matter what the question is, how long they've been in safeguarding. We can't expect to know everything, because the landscape of it is ever changing.
Yeah. And I'm really concerned about that feedback, because when people do that, it's about them. It's not about you. So if you are sitting here listening to this and hearing, yeah, but when I ask, that's what I get that's your job. You're the safeguarding lead. You should know the answer to that. That's telling you something about the other person going, oh, I don't know. But they're not willing to say, I don't know. And when you find yourself in a situation where you don't know and you don't know who to ask, my best suggestion is you go into the safeguarding team and ask there. And by that, I mean the local authority safeguarding team, the social workers, wherever. Go into those teams and ask there. There's always a way of asking them.
And also another way of doing it is to upskill your actual team that you work with in your school or whatever context you're in, charity, organization. If you're able to have more than one person in the safeguarding team, because let's be honest, a lot of people are doing it on their own.
To be fair, you should have two. You should have a DSL and a secondary DSL. So that's what I mean by team. Always work together. Yeah. But if the two of you, if there's only two of you, if you don't know the answers, and that can be the case. I mean, I worked in a special school. I had quite a large team of safeguarding leads.
Yeah.
But we still might not have the answer. And what we did then was we asked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's always somebody else to ask. That's the thing.
Yeah. The thing is, it's accountability in that, but I always used to make sure that each member, I used to have this tracker that basically went, what training could I find them? Especially there's loads of free training out there as well.
Oh yeah. Do as much training as you can. Definitely.
Brilliantly. And what I tried to do is make sure that they, each person had a specific area that they were expert in, so that they knew that I would go to them if there was a problem with that, and I would ask for their advice. So it wasn't a case of just because I was the DSL or safeguarding manager or safeguarding officer, it didn't mean that I had all the answers, but I actually really lent on a lot of my team and went, you have the expertise in that. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this situation.
That is the trick of leadership, full stop. I mean, as a head teacher, I didn't know everything. There was no way I could know everything. I just knew that I had a team of people that between them could give me most of the answers, Yeah. But then there's always a new question. This is what I mean by when you don't know, when you've got a large team and you still don't know, because it's a completely new scenario. That's when you go, hang on a minute, I'm going to just see if anybody else has come across this somewhere else in the safeguarding team, in the local authority, or wherever you go. Because it's okay not to know. And therefore, if you don't know and nobody you know knows, and you can't find the answer out without asking, then the thing you have to do is ask.
Absolutely. I tell you what, Jane, we could talk on for hours. I know what you and I are like. So I think we've given some great content today on this episode of make sure that you take time out at the end of the day if you can to speak it out loud. Make sure you get supervision or coaching or counseling. Look after yourself, lean on your team, and upskill as much as possible. And reach out to us if you have any questions. There are no silly questions. But as I say, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you, Jane, for joining us again. It has been an absolute pleasure. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the follow button so you don't miss another episode of Safeguarding Redefined.